Extraordinary. We first met, you were wheeling a suitcase in, you just arrived in Oxford.
And I didn't know that you were the principal or the
You had no
editor-in-chief.
idea who I was. I had no idea who you were or that you'd been a journalist. And in Oxford, what has, what's been your story of dress in Oxford since arriving?
I'm enjoying not being known on the streets. It's like you walk like everyone. No one pays attention. No one cares where you come from. And the funny thing is, when I was in London, it's a different story. So I went to the stores, and I was shopping, and no one really paid any attention to me. I was not wearing the hijab. And next week, the other week, I went and I wore the hijab, and all of them, like the salesperson would come and show me the VIB stuff because they thought that I was from the Gulf. And I was like, oh yeah, maybe I'm just having a look around. So, which was a totally different experience.
So let me understand the context, because I know that you've given this talk because you came to talk about it and your worries about it. So you originally filmed it for a TEDx, so it goes out there into the world, and there were things about it that worry you about its reception in different parts of the world.
I think there are different things that I fear about this talk is, the editing. So people would cut one part, and that would add whatever they want, like whatever context they want to that part, and that would be the one that they would share. That is why I was very careful in adding subtitles in Arabic and really making sure that it gets the message straight. There are personal concerns that are professional concerns because I'm a journalist. I cover politics, and there was this question. Now, if I do this talk, then people might profile me as the one who only talks about women issues. And then the sensitivity of the topic. I think the importance of it is that here is a woman who has the authority to do her own research and make the decisions based on her findings. And this is usually not what happens with us Muslim women. So I think if there would be a controversy with this talk, is that who gave you the right to interpret the Quran, or you see you make your decision based on the context. Why didn't you call that mufti or that sheikh or that religious scholar and he gives you? And I felt like my whole life, I feel like I will do my own research.
Then there's the religious bit which you've just touched on, which is you as a woman going to working out for yourself what they say. How unusual is that? How exceptional? How common?
There is a movement that is coming to life. For example, in India, in Indonesia, there are Muslim feminists. But really what made me make this talk is that there is a movement among us, young Muslims, not necessarily Yemeni, Saudis, Egyptians, but we don't share our stories. And the other part is with most of my friends that I had a chat with them about why they have this sense of guilt, They feel guilty that they're doing something against the religion. And then when I explain to them what the ayah says and the idea of harm and all of these things, they really feel a relief. So when I told them that I wanted to do a talk, and all of them really was so supportive, and they said, Safa, everyone needs to really listen to this talk and to this aspect of the interpretation of the Quran.
Because that in itself is so challenging.
Because of our, the tribal system, the patriarchy, it was all a reflection, the interpretations were reflections of the male mentality about how a woman should dress.
So just tell me about how women are finding agency and traction now in a very troubled part of the world.
The thing, I think after the Arab Spring, with the Arab Spring, there were two revolutions. A political one that took a bloody turnout, and then a cultural one. The whole world is focusing only on the political one. The cultural revolution, no one is paying attention to it. And maybe because people are just walking the revolution without talking it, So you see women really challenging the stereotypes, traveling, taking off the hijab based on whether she feels comfortable or not comfortable. You see people really questioning this religious authority. But no one writes about it. No one really talks about it. And I sense that there is a responsibility for me because, with opportunity comes responsibility.
No, nobody in the West is writing about it.
No, even in the Middle East.
Right.
Like you see that on Facebook. For example, 7 years ago, there are things that I wouldn't have dared to think about, even between me and myself. When my room is closed, dark, everything, if this idea comes to my mind, I'll just shut it off. Now people are discussing these things openly. They even reached the level of God. But people talk about it on their personal feedbacks, like Facebook accounts and everything, but no one is really, it's very few, no one is documenting it.
I'm not going to monopolize this conversation because I think there are some very interesting people in the audience who might relate to your story in a really interesting way. But let me just ask you this. Since, and I'm asking on behalf of your friends, really, but the Muslim women you know in this country since Westminster, since Manchester, since Tower Bridge, has their experience changed and that their reception in a hostile way or a more friendly way? I mean, or have things not really changed?
Here?
Yeah, just in Britain. Just talking amongst people you know.
I really don't know. I haven't talked to many Muslims here. I've been so Oxfordian in my own. But maybe you can ask.
Yeah, well, let's.
Joanna
I don't know if we can turn the lights up slightly, or whether we have to keep the lighting the same because we're filming this. But somebody who can respond to what you've heard tonight, and or want to ask her own questions of Safa. Yes, there.
This is Ahir from Gaza, Palestine. I met Safa before at one of the seminars, and the very interesting part of me meeting Safa, I could doubt she's Arabic when she was speaking in English, so I was like, I think she's from the Middle East, and I was waiting the seminar to finish so I would turn and ask her, like, where are you from? So I knew she was Yemeni, and I said, I'm coming from Gaza, Palestine. And the first thing Safa said was like, but you don't dress like that in Gaza, Palestine. And I was like, yeah, I don't. And we went out at that night, and we started talking, and I felt that my experience and Safa's experience are exactly the same, as if they are copied from each other. But however, like maybe the Yemeni community is more conservative than Gaza, because in Gaza we don't really wear the niqab, but it's all about the hijab. And we were talking about how annoying and how offensive and how like even very hard for us to be controlled, like the way we dress wherever we go. To me, when I was in Gaza, I was always controlled by the way I dressed, and I was always judged by the way I dressed, until I decided I'm not going to live in this society anymore, I just need to leave. And then when I left, I would say that the UK is kind of a different experience, because of course no one would recognize my religion, but it's also annoying for Muslim women to be judged again, exactly like what Safa said, based on their outfit. So wherever we go, whatever we do, either it's in the East or in the West, it's the way we dress. Like it's all about it's all about treating women as a subject. But I would disagree with one thing Safa said. She was talking about the harm. Like wherever the harm is different from a community to another. My point of view is that we should really get rid of this harm. We should really stop thinking of that harm. I mean, I wouldn't really dress to satisfy others. I mean, if I go to the States and I choose to wear the niqab, there shouldn't be any harm. No one has anything to do with the way I dress. If I go back to Gaza and I want to wear whatever I want to wear, again, there shouldn't be any harm if I decided to go with a short dress or whatever. So it's not about adapting with people's eyes. It's about just devastating this horrible idea of having to adapt. Like, okay, I'm going to Yemen tomorrow, I pick my niqab. I'm going to Beirut tomorrow, I'm picking my bikini. It shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be like that. I mean, I'm going everywhere, like me. I chose to look like that. I would go with me like that everywhere in the world. It shouldn't be like I should always be thinking of your perspective or the way you are looking at me. This should be like, khalas, we need to really get rid of that because men don't really bother about thinking about that. Why would I, in this time, in 2017, think about this again?
Let me just get Safa to respond to that.
I totally agree with you. But I wish that every woman would feel the same as you do. So your level of harm is so low, so you really don't care, and you have a strong personality. Yes, absolutely, I agree. Let's start our movement. I totally agree. Yeah.
Yes, there's.
So I'm just interested in what gives you two the strength to have this. What happened when you were very little that gave you the strength now, the confidence through all those difficult decisions? Was it your family, or was it just your parents, or was there something else? Because I think that's very important, whatever culture you're in. But I'm just interested. It's a big thing to come and do what you're doing. A lot of people wouldn't do that. So what do you think gave you that sort of...
With the first talk, by the way, I did the same one. I got sick for 2 days after the talk. I couldn't leave my room. Like, I couldn't even, I was so sick. The adrenaline was... But I admit that I come with privilege. I am privileged because of my father and my mother. My father was so supportive, like you can't imagine. He's so unique. I haven't seen any father, except one guy in Sana'a, who's similar to my father in supporting their girls, like really, very supportive. But maybe I wouldn't have been able to make this talk 1 year ago. Usually I'm a very instinct-driven person, so I just feel that this is the right time to do something. So it was the right time to leave my work in Yemen and go to Al Jazeera. Everyone was against me because I had and then it was the right time to leave Al Jazeera after 5 years, just a feeling. The right time to do like my master's in Oxford or Harvard. And with this one, it felt like it's the right time, but the decision was so hard. I flew all the way back to Doha to discuss with my friends whether to do this talk or not. Because the people I discussed with here, they don't know much about the sensitivity of the topic. So I had to go all the way to Qatar, and then I finished the talk, I literally felt that I'm gonna pass out. And then I got sick for 2 days. It's such a heavy thing, but I was ready for it.
Here, yes.
Ari.
Thank you, Safa, for a very interesting talk. As someone who comes from a conservative society, but perhaps less than yours, I'm totally against the idea of burqa. I totally reject it. I dislike it, I hate it. And if I have some authority more than right now, I would ban it. But because for me, I can't see the person. I can't feel the person behind it. The face is an expression which the burqa is going to hide. Could you share, and if you're able to share, because it's recorded, what you think of burqa itself?
Your question. First, let me ask you, why would you ban the burqa?
Because I think this is utmost extremism interpretation of Quran, which has not really...
Okay, what if a woman wants to wear it as a fashion?
Not at all.
She wants to wear it as fashion.
You can
She's not a Muslim. She's not a Muslim, but she wants to wear it as a fashion.
Doesn't matter.
You're a blog telling a woman what to do.
I think I would open this for discussion. So because... Let's open it for discussion.
Who wants to respond to?
Yeah, I'll respond to that. You're a blog. You're telling what a woman what to do, what she can and can't wear. Isn't that the patriarchy? Aren't you just perpetuating the cycle?
Excuse me, I'm coming from a very Muslim society.
Where are you from?
I'm from Kurdistan. We
I'm
can
Muslim
say,
as well.
please excuse me. And we are very good Muslims, non-radical. We pray 5 times a day. We go, people are very kind to each other. They practice the religion very good, but we don't wear niqab as a society. People wear hijab, people also wear not hijab, but as a society we don't believe in niqab as well. Because we believe...
As a society, how do you know the whole society doesn't believe in the niqab?
I know, right, that's where I come from.
Did you talk to all women?
Yes, if they can wear, we have Arab space people who have come from South and they wear, but we believe, there is a growing export of niqab from, my utmost respect, from the Wahhabis and Salafis to other parts of the world. And that's their interpretation of wearing, how a woman should look like.
Would you say that women should not wear short skirts? Would you say women should only wear short skirts? So having any kind of sort of prescription of how women dress is problematic, and I think that's a point that Safa spoke very richly to, that asking a woman to cover up or open up is a problem. And let's not go down that path at all. And to Safa, I think you just spoke of one really important message you want to give, which is to Muslim women, for them to know what the Quran says, for them to know that it is in fact a choice. The Quran doesn't impose this upon you. But by the same token, it's an important message to the West as well, for them to know that by sort of banning the burqa or the hijab, they're not sort of being this grand savior trying to liberate Muslim or Arabic women. Standards of how women should dress in every part of the world come from patriarchy and complex social norms. So it'd be really useful for you to sort of speak to that a little bit as well.
What I find interesting is that Muslim men, share with the Westerners the same misinformation of the struggles a Muslim woman go through. Okay, so for example, if I watch any TV talk show, American, British, any talk show, and or French, they talk about banning the burqa. They talk about the burqa as concepts. This is our religion, our right, but there is a human story behind this. That's why I decided to share my story. It's the details that really tell you behind it. And it's not only the West. Men, for example, I don't remember, even my father was like very open-minded and supportive, but my father didn't pay attention to the detail that I am going to miss the rain, or I am going to miss riding the bicycle, or I will be fully covered when I walk when it's like too hot. They really miss these details of the human daily life. So, and that is, I think, the power of sharing stories. You give the back of the concepts. They're really deep into what it means to be a Muslim or to be a woman. Or
I just wrote that down because it was so good. Yes, there's a question there.
Right, so I have a question from the context of religious revisionism. I used to live in Qatar. I was there for 10 years. And I wanted to ask this question to a person like who's actually studied Sharia law. How much can you criticize the text of a given book of your religion? I mean, this would be the Quran if you're a Muslim, and still be a proper Muslim, right? I mean, the thing is, you just mentioned how, according to the spirit of the text of the Quran, women actually do have a choice, right? And what I felt when I heard that was, well, that's lucky. Right? Because it could easily have been the other way around. The text could, quite literally just say women should cover themselves with a piece of cloth. There's no, there was no flexibility about the entire thing, right? So here you got lucky, right? But it could easily have been the other way, right? So in that parallel universe, right, where the Quran explicitly said women should cover themselves, right? Would you be able to say in this particular matter the Quran is wrong and still be considered among your people you're still a Muslim?
Do you want to be a proper Muslim between you and yourself, or do you want to share that with the society? So I considered myself as a proper Muslim for the last 4 years, walking in the West without wearing the hijab. I didn't share my story with anyone, only my family and my close friends. So I was okay. But the moment I decide to speak up, then I have to pay a price for that. And why do you want to speak up about it? Do you want to really educate the society about what the Quran is saying, or maybe start questioning and having a dialogue and conversation? Then I don't think that the society would accept that, no. But the good thing after the Arab Spring, when you open the Facebook of like intellectuals or young people, revolutionaries, they talk about these things. But then again, for example, if I talk about it, if I was in Lebanon, I might get away with it. But in Aden, in Yemen, in the south, because it's a war zone, in the last 2 months, 3 teenagers who were talking about, this is not our religion with all the extremism, the killing, and Allah is more merciful. And for example, one of the teenagers wrote on his Facebook, he said, I find Allah in flowers and you find Allah in graves. He was talking to the extremists. 3 days later, he was killed. He was 17 years old. So also it depends on where you are. What is the purpose you have of this? If you want to interpret the Quran, the way you want and live your own life and no one knows about it, you're fine.
We probably got time for a couple more questions as well. I don't know if yeah.
Sorry to not an expert. I just want to go back to since banning was brought up and so on. When you were admitted to Oxford as well as Harvard, and I know this because we've discussed this, you did actually wear the hijab. And you were interviewed, you did in fact wear the hijab. So just the counterfactual is that if it was banned, you wouldn't be here, and also that Oxford would lose having someone like you, hearing this, he's so unhappy to not have you here. So my point is really that banning also has this consequence of limiting access to women to certain spaces. So maybe the burkini is the only way women can access the beach, and so banning it means that they just don't go there. And also that it sort of limits representation, and it limits who actually is in these spaces and what they can do. So it might be interesting to hear.
Yeah, really, when I was wearing the hijab, there was nothing that would restrict me from dreaming. Like I used to tell my friends, I'm going to go to my father, I'm going to go to the moon wearing the hijab. There was no glass ceiling for my dreams. So when I applied to Harvard and Oxford, I was wearing the hijab. And I remember when I was a kid, I really pictured myself giving the graduation speech, whether in Oxford or at Harvard, wearing the hijab, representing my religion and my country. But later, I would represent them, but in a new look. So.
There's a question here, I think.
Maybe?
From
There's someone in the stairs, you can't see.
Yeah, we've got 2 more questions, yes.
My question is actually asking for advice from you for some of my friends, because I'm from Nigeria, and there was a time of political tension and security issues where there was an extremist group. So on one hand, they were threatened by wearing the hijab or the niqab, where we call it burqa in Nigeria. Whereas on the other hand, by taking it off, they felt their identity was being taken from them. So whether they put it on or whether they took it off, they felt their security in their self was being threatened. What advice would you have for young girls going through those struggles?
Oh my God. Sometimes I feel like poor we are women. All the challenges we have to face. Is this like I have no idea. Maybe I should go and live in but it's in the same city?
Northern Nigeria.
Like in the same city, whether it doesn't matter whether she wears the niqab or she wears the hijab, she will be harmed? Or for example, if she goes to another place? For me, security comes first. Nothing is worth your life. So if that place requires you to wear the hijab, wear it, as long as your life is threatened. I would have done that thing, because I need to protect my life. I need to live as long as I can.
Suddenly, Lots of questions. We really ought to finish in about 5 minutes. So should we try and, well, have you got quick questions? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
For your inspirational talk. I myself, and a few words in Sister Rusbridger. I come myself from a country which is not Muslim. I'm from Armenia and I'm Christian myself. But at the same time, the society is very conservative and traditional. And while you were telling the story, I saw so many layers of me there. And as a woman, I went through lots of layers and self there. And thank you for this.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you for the talk. I think the discussion that you had on the Quran is a little bit limited, if I may say, because there is much more on the topic of the hijab in the Quran, although the word hijab is not mentioned there, but there are other verses, and we have also the hadith traditions that are sayings coming from the Prophet and companions. So an overall discussion of the topic would really require a deeper analysis. And aren't you afraid that there is something maybe a little bit condescending about telling other women in the Islamic world that the hijab is not a norm that they have to follow, that it's not, a wajib or something they have to do that comes from God? Because a lot of them are very learned. I mean, you have women who are teaching Sharia law and who are wearing the hijab. So I'm afraid that we are maybe in some ways moving into extremes. I understand that it's a personal choice and interpretation of the Quran or any sacred text is very personal, but I think there should be room also for those who interpret it as their duty towards their Lord, and that should be completely fine.
I'm not asking women, and I'm not telling women whether that's... No. Okay, let me explain it, because there are so many nuances in here. First, it's my personal story, so this is really what happened. So I would look, and the other ayahs, most of them are addressing the wives of the Prophet, but the men interpreters of the Quran, they tell you this is all Muslim women have to apply to these rules, while the ayah addresses the wife of the Prophet, okay? So most of them. And then if the man would give himself the power to tell women what to do or not, I have more power than that because I am a woman. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, but I'll try, I'll keep looking at it. But the women who studied Sharia, they studied the man interpretations of the text. But I'm still doing my research, but I gave myself the full authority to, at least to me, to myself, to know what is wajib, what is an order, what is not an order, what is based on my own research. And you know what really irritates me? Really, really irritates me, because when I studied Sharia, there was one of the students, and we were talking about. So I told him about the hijab, and he said, "But women, you attract men." And I said, "Who told?" He was so handsome. He was so handsome, and I told him, "Who told you? Who told you? Why don't you cover up?" And he said, "Why?" I said, "You're so handsome. You don't know the gatherings, the students, the female students. All the gossip, most of the time, was about this guy." And I said, "Why don't you cover up?" And he was like, I said, "You're really attracting the women." And he was really kind of shocked, but he said, "No, this is different because usually women don't get attracted to men." And that was this is really what they use as a justification most of the time. So I was like, "Excuse me, have you ever been a woman? Like, do you really?" So I know what it feels like a woman. I know my circumstances, and alhamdulillah, I'm so privileged. I studied Sharia, I can read the Quran, and I can make my own research. So why don't I at least give myself the power to know things that concern me personally as a woman? Because the man really doesn't know anything about the woman. He's a man.
On that note, I think we should stop. But thank you, Safa, for coming to this, and thank you for agreeing to do questions. I think everybody in the audience feels you've done something rather remarkable and courageous tonight, and I hope it's well received when it finally goes out into the world in the way that you want it to be, and we hope it goes viral. We hope other women draw strength from it. So thank you very much for coming to do that tonight.